You only would have clicked on this video if you feel like your grades, your work in school, or whatever it is not good enough. And in this video, I will explain to you exactly how to go about getting immensely good grades, whether you're in high school, middle school, whatever, or college, or possibly even post-grad. And this is coming from someone that absolutely knows how to do it. There's not an immense amount of things I'm extremely good at, but getting good grades is one of those things. For those of you who don't know, an A minus is about 3.7 in college, and as a mechanical engineer at UCI, I have about a 3.84, which is an average above that, which is not easy to do. But because of the methods that I put place and a lot of the things that I'm going to explain to you in this video, I can do that. And no, I'm not going to be just telling you to study, study, study. I can do this without it burning a hole in my time. I can have a social life. I can work out. I can do the things I want to do. And that's because I spend my time on what matters. And I see many, many mistakes that people in college make that is wasting their time and causing them to do extremely poorly in terms of their academics. So if you can give me your focus in this video, I know most people are either already clicked off or they're already, have this in the background as they're going through like Instagram or Reddit in another app or something. You just need to be able to focus, because by the end of this video, if you listen and take the things that I tell you and implement them, you're going to be able to easily do well in all your classes. So I'm posting this specifically at the beginning of the quarter because I want you to be on track before you start, getting off track in the classes, because you get the class, you get your syllabuses, and if there's kind of this is your grade. If you miss something early in the quarter, if you're not focused the first 1, 2, 3 weeks, it's almost like as soon as you get off course, it just continually will get that way, because the things in a class will build on themselves. And if you're like looking at something in a class and you're like, there's this topic I don't really understand, I'm just going to skip it. It probably won't be that important. You let yourself kind of talk yourself out of putting that extra bit of focus. The beginning of the class is where your focus should be absolutely the highest, because you cannot afford to not understand the foundational concepts. Because if you try to go back and do that later, it's just gonna, it's like building a tower almost. If your foundation isn't good, it's just gonna be insanely hard once you get to those topics at the end of a class that are relying on those. And that works not quite to the same degree, but it works in the same degree if you have a physics 3 class. If you weren't solid in your physics 1 and physics 2, not saying you can't get to that point, but it's going to be a lot harder. But the good thing is that most classes in university, they are relatively easy to study on their own, where you don't necessarily need to remember things from previous classes. And typically, you don't remember the details of those classes anyway. So at the beginning of the quarter, when you get your syllabus, you need to read it extremely closely, and you need to focus very intensely on the beginning topics. But the biggest mistake I see people make is they waste their time doing things that don't help them. So what I'm talking about is there's a lot of, especially at universities such as UCI, which is a research university, where the teachers may not be that good at teaching, or they hire TAs that aren't necessarily that good. And that's not to say that's all teachers or all TAs. But the thing is, if you go to a lecture and you feel like you didn't learn anything from it, you didn't get anything from that lecture, but the teacher, for example, posts what textbook chapters there are or what ideas there are, you can go to other resources. Like you can go to YouTube, or you can go to the textbook, or you can find, other classes, lectures, or things like that. Or if you go to a discussion and you don't find anything useful, do not go. So many people will go to a lecture and just sit there and kind of tune out because they can't focus, or the teacher's talking in a way that doesn't hold their interest or that doesn't click with them, and just waste their time. They don't take attendance. You don't have to go to lectures. You don't have to go to discussions. And there is so many of those that are a waste of your time. Within the first 1 or 2 discussion sections, I know whether I'm going to be going the rest of the quarter. And generally, it's not worth going. Now, this means that you're going to have the discipline to be able to go and do this on your own time. You have to be able to self-motivate yourself. But this is a way that you can take the time you have and actually make it useful. So something that the teacher can go over, especially lectures, if you miss one topic, the teacher's going to keep going. But if you can watch that lecture recorded, like later, for example, you don't have to watch it at the discussion time. Watch it on your own time. Anytime you get confused, you can pause it, go to another resource like the textbook or like YouTube and figure that out and then continue. But if you go in lecture, you're going to get lost, forget that you even didn't know what that was going on. And then by the end of the lecture, you're going to be like, all right, I learned it. It's like, no, you didn't. You need to go and actually learn the material. And here's the biggest thing. You need to know what you're going to be getting tested on. Because as much as lectures are generally about the actual, the concepts, they're rarely about problem solving. Or the problems that are gone over in lectures are usually the most simple examples. Now, this is where something like homework can be more of a better demonstration, because they're showing you, hey, after we've taught you this material, these are the types of questions that we can ask you based on it. And there's a lot of people who will go and not understand something on the homework, and then will either look it up on either Chegg or copy someone else's homework, and they'll go, oh, that makes sense, and they'll copy down the homework. But no, if you copy down a homework problem and you're like, oh, that makes sense, you do not know how to do that problem. If I took away what you just wrote down, waited an hour, and asked you how to do it, you would not be able to solve it. And people trick themselves into thinking now that they've read the solution and that makes sense, that all of a sudden they can do it. This is one of the biggest ways people make mistakes, is by tricking themselves into thinking they understand the material by either copying it off someone else or looking up the solution when they don't get it right away. Excuse me. So when you run into something you can't do, you can look up the solution, absolutely, but you need to make sure that you go back and try that problem again later without looking at the solution, to make sure that you actually remember how to do it. And this is why, especially in STEM fields where most of the tests and the homeworks are problem solving, you need to focus as much of your time on simulating things that would be like the test as you can. So this means going through and doing all of the practice problems in a chapter, or going through the homework and making sure you understand each one. Because think about it this way, you need to spend your time on what's going to be tested of you. If you go through the lecture over and over, and the lecture is giving you the concepts of, if you have higher pressure here and lower pressure here, obviously you're going to get a fluid that's going to push this way. Yes, that makes sense conceptually. But if you don't understand the certain equations, like Navier-Stokes, for example, that's going to be telling you how that liquid moves or how different variables affect each other, you're not going to be able to solve the problems. So this is why I recommend spending as much time as you can on the things that are actually going to be teaching you. And this means to ruthlessly cut things that are wasting your time. Because so many people just, you do not need to go to things that are wasting your time. And especially one other thing, you need to talk to other people in your classes. This is helpful in way more ways than you could imagine. First off, when you're confused about something, people can help you to understand it. But also, generally, there are materials such as previous year's exams or things that people have access to that you need to talk with them and in order to get those resources. You must be social, which I know is difficult for certain people. But when you go to a discussion or you go to a lecture, just sit next to people, try to get some sort of study group, especially upperclassmen or people that you look up to that can help you in your classes. Because trying to compete on your own, when other people are in groups, you are going to get demolished. You are not going to be able to succeed, or you're going to waste a lot of the time that you don't have to. Because when you go to university, you're going to see, or if you already see, people sit in groups. There's different people that talk and study with different people. And those groups, they benefit each other. They share their resources. They say, hey, things like this. If a lecture wasn't very good at a certain topic, someone will find a YouTube video that helped them and they'll be like, hey, check this out. You need that group, that community, in order to do well. Because just like anything else, trying to go through school on your own, you're making it like way more difficult than you have to. Okay, so let's say you're doing all that. You're focusing your time on the problems. You're not wasting time on things that you don't feel helpful. You're in a group that you're sharing resources with, and you're, going to things like office hours when you need and getting the help that you want. One other thing is, don't be afraid to ask questions, because if you're confused on something and you just let it slip, like, I know you think you're going to remember later and go back to that and try to figure it out on your own. And the problem isn't that you won't do that. The problem is that the teacher is going to continue their lecture, or the discussion is going to continue. And now that you don't understand this little bit, the rest is not going to make sense to you. And you're going to be wasting your time the next however long it is. So whenever you have a question, no matter how stupid it is, raise your hand and ask it. This is their job. They are trying to help you. And by not asking a question, you're sabotaging your own time. And like, you're paying to be there. Ask your questions. Like, it's mind-blowing to me that people will just, I know maybe you're nervous in front of a group or something, but this is something you need in order to be able to understand the subject and not be, wasting your own time. So now you do well on a test or you don't do well on a test. You need to look over what you did wrong. Especially, go ahead and ask the teacher, be like, hey, let's say you got the midterm back. Is the final going to be cumulative? And if it is, you need to especially see what you did wrong so that you don't make that same mistake again. Because if you don't, you likely will, especially in classes like math or problem solving, pretty much most classes in general. Even if they say it's not cumulative, a lot of the same ideas will cross over. And if there's any of those you're confused on, you need to make sure you fix it before you move on. It's just like that foundation I was talking about earlier. If there's cracks in your foundation and you don't fix those, they're going to come up later and you're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes. Okay. Where was I going to go after that? By the way, I'm literally just talking to you as if you were I was just talking to a friend. So I hope you guys enjoy just this and you find it helpful. But, okay. What was it? Okay, I'm going to do a cut here until I remember what I was thinking about. Okay, I remember. What I wanted to say is, make sure you use every single resource that the teacher provides to you. And go through those resources in the mindset of, if I was a teacher, what kind of questions could I use this to ask? For example, if you're coming up on a test and a teacher says, here's some additional problems you can check out if you want. Go and do those problems. Teachers aren't just going to bring up random stuff unless they're going through, and when they're creating the test, they're thinking man, maybe I should have gone over this part a little bit more, or maybe they need a little bit more practice on this because I'm putting it on the test, so I'm just going to put this out there. So make sure you pay really close attention to those resources. And the other thing I also wanted to bring up, what was it? Okay, the last topic is to test yourself. If you are the type of person that either, crunches under pressure or feels like they don't do as well on the test as they think they can, it's because you should not be sitting down and doing problems without the textbook open or all your resources until the day of the test. There should be no surprises. Let's say you get a cheat sheet. You should make that cheat sheet and be going through and doing problems with it as you go through the quarter, or after you develop your cheat sheet, using it to review things. Because if you do the entirety of the quarter or semester's work with the lectures open next to you, so that anytime there's an equation, you can go to the lectures, and all of a sudden you're in an environment like a test where you don't have access to those resources, you're going to freak out and you're going to not do as well as you would like. And this is because you're used to those resources. You need to prepare yourself in the same way you're going to be on the test. if you know that you're going to have to memorize everything for the test, you need to be memorizing these things as you go and doing the problems without the resources. And it seems like common sense. Like you should like practice how you play. Like you shouldn't you're training for one thing and you're doing another on the test. Being able to do the problems with the resources and the notes is entirely different from being able to do it without them. Or if you're someone that struggles with time, asking the teacher, hey, how long are we going to have and roughly how many problems, so that you can make sure you're able to do them under pressure is, very important. Because there's way too many people that will just not prepare for the test in this way. Like, it's just astonishing that anyone would have, a cheat sheet that they don't use for a single problem until they're on the test. So take all these things together. Hopefully it was helpful, and I wish you the best of luck. Make sure you, devote your time to the things you do, because it's also your focus. You need to be able to, know when to take breaks, and make sure when you are focusing, it's intense focus on what you're doing. And I'll talk more about that stuff later if people find it interesting. But for this, I just wanted to talk specifically more about classes, but hope you enjoyed.